Thinking about leaving Windows 10? Before you ditch Microsoft completely, you need to hear this, because switching to Linux sounds simple online. It's just install Ubuntu, it's free, it's better, it's more private. Can the average Windows 10 user actually transition smoothly? Or is this one of those things that sounds easier than it really is? Let's be honest. Windows 10 users are used to a certain workflow. Start menu on the left, taskbar at the bottom, File Explorer layout, right-click menus, .exe installers. It's familiar. It's muscle memory. Now imagine replacing that overnight with something completely different. New desktop layout, different settings menu, different software installation system, different file system structure. For some people, that sounds exciting. For others, that sounds stressful. So today we're looking at Ubuntu, one of the most popular Linux distributions, and asking one simple question. If you're a normal Windows 10 user, can you actually live here? First, let's talk about the desktop experience. When you first install Ubuntu, the layout feels different. The dock is usually on the side. The top bar works differently. System settings are organized differently. For someone coming from Windows, that can feel uncomfortable at first. But here's what most people don't realize. Linux is flexible. Ubuntu doesn't lock you into one layout. You can move the dock to the bottom. You can change themes. You can adjust icon styles. You can even make it look surprisingly close to Windows 10 if that makes you more comfortable. That's something Windows doesn't offer in the same way. Now let's talk about software. This is where people panic. Will my programs work? If you rely heavily on Microsoft Office desktop apps, Adobe Creative Cloud, or certain niche Windows-only software, the transition gets complicated, but for many average users, what do they actually use? A browser? Office documents? Media players? Email? Basic utilities? Ubuntu handles those easily. Firefox or Chrome? Available. LibreOffice? Built-in VLC? One-click install? Email clients? Multiple options. The real shift isn't capability. It's installation mindset. On Windows, you download an installer from a website. On Ubuntu, you usually install apps from the software center, similar to an app store. It's cleaner, simpler, and often safer. No random .exe downloads. No sketchy pop-ups. No bundled junk. That's a huge plus. But let's not pretend everything is perfect. Gaming? It's better than it used to be. Thanks to tools like Steam Proton, many Windows games now run on Linux, but not all. If you're a competitive online gamer, relying on specific anti-cheat systems, you need to research carefully before switching. Hardware support? For most modern laptops and desktops, Ubuntu works out of the box. But very new hardware can sometimes require tweaks. And that's where expectations matter. Linux doesn't try to be Windows. It tries to be Linux. And the real question isn't, is it identical? The real question is it usable enough that the differences don't matter? For many people, after a week of adjustment, muscle memory shifts, click patterns change. Menus feel normal. Shortcuts become automatic.
No?
The fear of switching is often bigger than the switch itself. But that doesn't mean it's for everyone. There are trade-offs. And before you wipe your Windows drive, you need to understand them clearly. Because the smartest move isn't an emotional switch. It's an informed one. That's what we'll dig into next. Now let's talk about something that matters even more than appearance, daily workflow. Because switching operating systems isn't about how it looks, it's about how it feels when you actually use it. On Windows 10, most people have built habits over years. You know where settings are, you know how to uninstall programs, you know how to troubleshoot basic issues. Ubuntu changes that, but not in a scary way. It just organizes things differently. For example, installing apps. Instead of searching Google, downloading an installer, clicking next 5 times, and hoping there's no bundled junk, Ubuntu gives you a software center. You open it, search the app, click install, done, no pop-ups, no license screens every time, no background junk installing itself. That alone surprises many Windows users.
How?
Let's talk about performance. One thing almost every Windows 10 user notices after switching to Ubuntu is how lightweight it feels. Boot times are often faster. System responsiveness feels smoother. Older hardware suddenly feels usable again. That's because Linux distributions like Ubuntu generally use fewer background services and don't rely on heavy telemetry processes. Which brings us to privacy. On Windows 10, there are always background services talking to Microsoft. You can disable many of them, but it takes effort. Ubuntu doesn't collect that kind of usage data by default. There's no forced Microsoft account, no automatic cloud time, no telemetry dashboard you have to dig through. For privacy-conscious users, that's a major advantage. But now, let's address the real friction points. File compatibility. LibreOffice can open and edit Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint files. But complex formatting, especially with heavy macros or advanced Excel sheets, can sometimes break. If your job depends on perfectly formatted Office documents, you need to test before switching full-time. Same with Adobe software. Photoshop alternatives like GIMP exist. DaVinci Resolve works on Linux for video editing. But if your workflow is deeply tied to Adobe Creative Cloud, Linux will feel limiting. Now here's where the smartest approach comes in. You don't have to ditch Microsoft overnight. You can dual boot. That means you keep Windows 10 and install Ubuntu alongside it. When your PC starts, you choose which one to enter. This removes pressure. You can experiment safely. Test your apps. Try your daily tasks. See what works and what doesn't. That's how smart transitions happen. Another important factor is mindset. Linux rewards curiosity. If something doesn't work, there's usually documentation. Forums, guides, tutorials. The community support is strong, but you may have to search and read a little. If you hate troubleshooting or learning small new things, the switch might feel frustrating at first. If you enjoy understanding how your system works, Linux feels empowering. And here's something people don't talk about enough. After a few weeks on Ubuntu, many users say something surprising. They stop thinking about the operating system entirely. It just works. Web browsing feels the same. Streaming feels the same. Emails feel the same. And most daily tasks are browser-based anyway, which leads to a big realization. For many average users, Windows isn't necessary anymore. It's familiar but not essential. But we're not done yet, because there are still honest downsides to consider. And before you wipe your Windows drive, you need the full picture, not just the optimistic side. Let's break that down next. So now, let's be completely honest. Should Windows 10 users switch to Linux? The answer is not a simple yes or no. It depends on what kind of user you are. If you mainly use your computer for web browsing, email streaming, Office documents, light photo editing, basic productivity, then yes, the transition to Ubuntu can be surprisingly smooth. After the first few days, muscle memory adjusts. The dock feels normal. Settings become familiar. App installation becomes easier. And for many people, performance actually improves, especially on older machines. But if your workflow depends on very specific Windows-only software, the situation changes. Certain professional tools don't have native Linux versions. Some gaming titles still struggle with compatibility. Some enterprise applications require Windows environments. If your income depends on those tools, switching without testing would be risky. That's why the smartest move isn't ditch Microsoft. It's test intelligently. Install Ubuntu on a spare drive, or use dual boot, or even try it inside a virtual machine first. Give yourself 2 weeks. Use it for daily browsing. Write documents. Install apps. Customize the layout to match what you're comfortable with. You might be surprised, because here's something most people don't realize. A huge percentage of what we do today lives inside a browser. Google Docs, YouTube, Netflix, social media, email, banking. If your life happens in Chrome or Firefox, the operating system matters far less than you think. That realization removes a lot of fear. Now let's talk about mindset again. Linux gives you control. No forced updates at inconvenient times. No automatic account locks. No surprise system behavior changes tied to corporate decisions. You choose when to update. You choose how your desktop looks. You choose how your system behaves. For some people, that feels freeing. For others, it feels like extra responsibility. Windows is more standardized. Linux is more customizable. Neither is objectively better for everyone. But here's the big truth. Switching to Linux isn't about escaping Microsoft. It's about understanding your options. Most Windows 10 users stay because it's familiar, not because it's necessary. And once you test Ubuntu, you might realize the barrier isn't technical, it's psychological. Fear of the unknown. But once you actually try it, the unknown becomes normal surprisingly fast. Now, should you wipe Windows today? No, not unless you've tested your workflow first. But should you explore Linux before Windows 10 eventually loses support? Absolutely. Because learning early gives you leverage. If you wait until you're forced to move, whether by hardware restrictions or end-of-life deadlines, the transition feels stressful. If you experiment now, it feels empowering. That's the difference. So can Windows 10 users easily transition to Linux? Yes, if their needs are mainstream and they're open to learning small differences. No. If they depend on specialized Windows-only tools and expect identical behavior without adaptation, the smartest move? Test it. Don't panic. Switch. Don't blindly reject it. Explore it. Because once you realize you have options, you stop feeling locked in. And that changes everything.